California Governor Gavin Newsom and Democrats who run our state government have been caught violating transparency laws. Coming up, I'll give you the 4 violations that they're guilty of and what we're doing to hold them accountable and restore open government in the state of California. I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California and a California state legislator representing District 75 in the state assembly. Governor Gavin Newsom and the California Democrats who run our state government, they're breaking transparency laws. And this is officially known as National Sunshine Week. This is where open government advocates across the country in every one of our 50 state capitals shine a light on government, and they review how open is the process that the governor and the legislature and all public officials use to conduct the people's business. Well, in California, Gavin Newsom and the California Democrats have failed the transparency test. Coming up, I'll tell you the 4 ways they are violating state transparency laws. These are laws that are already on the books in the state of California, but they are violating these laws repeatedly. And there's a simple reason why. They want to operate behind closed doors. They don't want the public to know what's actually going on. They don't want the public even to participate in what's going on. They want to just simply cram things through in the dead of night, in darkness, and then impose bad policies on the people. Transparency should be a bipartisan issue. We shouldn't have a Democrat or Republican view on open government. It should be that, hey, government is the people's business, and you conduct the people's business in the light of day. It's not what's happening here in the state of California. So let me go through the 4 violations of basic state transparency laws. And all these laws are very similar to laws that are on the books across the country, where other states, other governors are actually complying with these laws, but not here in California. And sadly, with rare exception, the California liberal media refuses to shine a light on the non-compliance. First up is our state legislature is violating almost every conceivable transparency rule on the books. They are conducting business behind closed doors. They are violating the requirement to post legislation within 72 hours. They are violating transparency rules for whether legislators are voting on bills and whether legislators vote in favor or opposition to a bill. And nothing could be clearer than throwing journalists off the floor of each of these chambers. So at least in the assembly, the media is allowed to sit on the assembly floor in the back to watch what's going on up close and personal. And that's a good thing, because the media should be allowed in the room to kind of see what's going on, who's trading votes, who's twisting arms. But while that's happening in the assembly, it's not happening in the state Senate. Ashley Zavala with KCRA and Hearst Broadcasting. She files reports all around the state of California. She does great work, by the way. Tweeted out on Friday, California State Senate has severely limited press access in the chamber to journalists despite repeated calls from CCA California to change this. Leaders will not listen. Here's what's going on. Before the pandemic, journalists had access to these desks behind lawmakers. These desks allow journalists to interact with senators in a way that we cannot any other time outside of the floor session. Sitting behind senators allows us to get clarification on a bill, floor action, or simply develop rapport with members. But post-COVID, the Senate and Chief Administrative Officer Erica Contreras decided to shove us in the back corner and give these desks to staff. For the last 2 years, CCA California has asked the Senate to give the desks back to journalists. Journalists have tried to sit there this year, but keep being kicked out. I asked the Senate leaders to change this last month, no update. Then today it happened. My colleagues noticed I, like Mike, that's the Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats, complaining that I was still sitting in a desk. Then the Senate Chief Administrative Officer, Erica Contreras, came over to kick me out and told me the desk was for staff only. She was kicked out. She was removed. And this means that there's no transparency. Another reason why we need to have people in the room when they're voting on bills is that lawmakers sometimes literally walk off the floor because they're too chicken blank to take a position on a bill. They don't want their constituents to know that they don't support a bill. So instead of voting against it to kill it, they just walk off the floor. It's a no-show. Here's Cal Matters. California lawmakers keep killing bills by not voting on them. Do the rules need to change? Yeah, they should change. So they just walk off the floor, or what they do is they don't even vote on the bill at all. They put it in something called the suspense file. The suspense file means we don't want this bill to go forward, so we're just going to shove it in orbit. We're just going to put it on hold. A lot of times it gets killed in the Appropriations Committee. I believe that we should force legislators to vote on every bill, yes or no, so that the voters know whether you support or oppose something. That's the way a democracy should work. Take a position, be held accountable. The legislature also operates using non-disclosure agreements. We found this out on a very controversial union-backed bill where the labor unions bullied their way in to imposing these crazy regulations on small business owners. And people were trying to figure out, where did these ideas come from? Well, the staff and the lawmakers signed non-disclosure agreements. I'm sorry, but you work for the people. You're not allowed to enter into a private contract with some corporate special interest, some big money contributor that we're going to keep secrets. The hell you are. NDAs should be made illegal, but nope. Every time the idea comes up to specifically ban non-disclosure agreements for legislators and their staff with special interests, the bill gets killed. Look, at Reform California, we made the decision to back candidates to go into the state legislature, like myself. That's why I ran for the 75th Assembly District, because we wanted to get inside the belly of the beast, to open up the process, to shine a light, to lift the curtain. And that's what we've been doing. Every day, 5 o'clock on this show, we give you the story behind the story. We lift the veil, and they don't like it at all. I need your help to continue to shine a spotlight on what's actually going on in the state legislature, because obviously, as you just saw, they're not complying with open government rules. The state legislature itself operates in secret in a number of ways. Help me make reform happen. Help me elect more people. Help me agitate to change some of these crazy rules. But more importantly, help me bring you this show every day to explain what's going on, the bad bills, the maneuvers, the tricks. Go to the website, reformcalifornia.org, chip in a contribution to support the work we're doing, but more importantly, sign up so that you're getting the news each week. Every week on Friday at 9 a.m., we send out a news wrap of all the important stories that you need to know that liberal media outlets usually don't cover. Go to reformcalifornia.org, reformcalifornia.org right now and chip in. So number one rule that we violate is state legislative matters should be done in public, in open. Legislators should be required to vote on bills, not kill them without voting on them. No NDA should ever be engaged in with elected officials. And of course, we should be able to read the bills first. A lot of times, what I didn't cover in this first section, but I'll add in right now, is that the legislature puts a bill, like a trailer bill, on the budget amendment, and nobody knows, but it enacts sweeping changes in laws, but we're not given the heads up as to what that sweeping change is, so that the public knows, and it's done in the middle of the night on the budget bill. And so they routinely are trying to deprive us of the read the bill first requirements that have been put into place. So that's number one. The legislature does not follow basic transparency rules. Number two, government agencies are not complying with what we call the Public Records Act. Public Records Acts are on the books across the country. It gives any citizen the right to ask for a government document. This is how we audit government. This is how outside investigators, reporters, citizens can figure out what's actually going on, what business is being done. If you want to see, like, the contract that's been awarded with your taxpayer money to some company, you have a right to get the copy of the contract and look at the terms and conditions. You have a right to look at the emails going back and forth between legislators and government staff and various special interests. except in California, because our Public Records Act exempts the state legislature. It also gives a bunch of exit clauses and exemptions for all government agencies. And finally, a lot of government agencies simply ignore it. So, for example, there are rumors that there is a FBI investigation involving several members of the state legislature. And the media asked very simply, can you give us any documents, any legal bills associated with dealing with federal investigations, any search warrants that you've been served with in the last 12 months? Cal Matters has the story. Have federal agents served warrants at the state capitol? The legislature doesn't want you to know. The legislature refuses to answer the question, saying, oh, it's privileged. So you're not able to know whether your elected representatives are being targeted for criminal investigations. Well, that seems insane. But even at a local level, the California Public Records Act allows you to go to your city hall, your county board, your school district, and issue a request for documents, and they have to give it to you within a certain time frame for free. But repeatedly, these agencies deny records requests. They say either they don't exist or, oh, we can't give those to you because they're, quote, privileged, exempt from the law. Again, Cal Matters has a story, and I'm not just highlighting their work, but these are good stories that they've done, and I give them credit where credit's due. Cal Matters lawsuit forces LA officials to turn over secret homeless shelter complaints. We had to have a lawsuit in order for you to compel an agency to comply with the law. See, most of these government agencies know that if they deny a request, that most people are just going to give up, walk away, and the secret is hidden. Very few have the money, like Cal Matters, to hire a lawyer and file a lawsuit. This is outrageous. That's why in my office, I've introduced a bill, the Open Government Accountability Act, and it requires that an ombudsman, basically who's a watchdog, be appointed statewide. And anyone whose record request is rejected by a state or local agency may appeal the decision to the ombudsman, this neutral third party, who will be the arbiter of whether the local agency or the state agency was correct in denying the record. So instead of you having to hire a lawyer to assert your rights, to protect your rights for transparency, my bill would allow you to have an umpire, a neutral arbiter called an ombudsman, the Open Government Public Transparency Ombudsman. This is a simple reform. It should not be partisan. I'm asking my colleagues to support me in getting this done, but I don't think they will because they don't want open government. They hear from government bureaucrats who say, let us keep our secrets. And by the way, let's make sure you get to keep your secrets too. And of course, my bill also requires that the legislature comply with the Public Records Act. That's another reason why the politicians don't want to pass it. So that's the second way that California fails the test of transparency. The third way, they lie to you on your ballot. We know that there are false and misleading ballot titles that are put out there by the California Attorney General or your local county board, school board, or city council. When they put a measure on the ballot that they want you to pass, they put a favorable title on it. Like tax hikes, they hide the fact that there's a tax hike in the ballot measure. You don't know that you're voting for a tax hike. So they're depriving voters of the transparency that they deserve to know what am I actually voting on. They're lying to voters on these false and misleading, deceptive, manipulative ballot titles. At Reform California, we are leading the fight to file an initiative to require honest ballot titles on a range of topics, starting first with tax increases. We have our Taxpayer Protection Initiative that we're working with a statewide coalition to file, collect signatures, and pass in the 2026 election to ensure that anytime you vote on a measure that has a tax increase in it, that transparency rules require that the word tax increase be the first two words of the ballot title. So it's a warning. It's a heads up to you, making it quite transparent. You're voting on a tax increase. But we need to apply honest ballot titles to all elements of state and local ballot measures. Help us out. Go to the Reform California website, reformcalifornia.org, reformcalifornia.org, and chip in a contribution so that we can make that reform a reality. The fourth way that California politicians fail the transparency test is they kick people like me, who ask tough questions off of key committees. So as you know, 2 weeks ago, I was removed from the state budget committee simply because I was shining a light on the waste, fraud, and abuse and money laundering. There's no other way to talk about it. Money laundering going on by California Democrats to fund left-wing political organizations with your taxpayer money. Here's Fox News. Blue state GOP lawmaker goes viral for exposing state spending proposals. People were appalled. Assemblymember Carl DeMaio was one of several GOP lawmakers removed or shifted from their committees. They took the budget watchdog off of the budget committee simply because I was asking tough questions and exposing the waste, fraud, and abuse. They did this to several other of my colleagues who were asking tough questions on a range of issues, from the insurance crisis to election issues and everything in between. By removing people who are asking questions and shining a light on problems from key posts and committees, by punishing whistleblowers, and I consider myself a whistleblower, California fails the transparency test of removing people from positions when they simply shine a light. Those are the 4 ways that California politicians have failed the transparency test and are operating their government behind closed doors in the dark. Number 1, the legislature is not complying with transparency rules on how legislation goes through, who's voting for what. Number 2, the state and local agencies are not complying with the Public Records Act. That's why we need a neutral arbiter to enforce it. Number 3, they're using dishonest ballot titles to hide things in ballot measures that are bad. And number 4, they're retaliating against whistleblowers, not just legislators like myself, but rank and file whistleblowers. Absolutely numerous cases across the state. We deserve better. We deserve an open government. This is Sunshine Week. Help me fight for transparency in California. You can do that by going to our website, reformcalifornia.org, reformcalifornia.org, chipping in a contribution, or more importantly, sign up at the bottom of the website. First name, last name, zip code, and email. That way we will give you the results of our spotlights, our investigations. Every week you get a weekly news wrap covering topics that the liberal media doesn't tell you. Check us out at reformcalifornia.org. Join the movement to hold state government in California accountable. Until next time, I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California and a California state legislator. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. But before you click away, please subscribe to this channel and click that notification button so you get updated when we post new episodes. Plus, like this video and share it with your friends so that we can help spread our message across the state. Reform California with Carl DeMaio is paid for by Carl DeMaio for State Assembly.